Now, Ambassador, you wrote in the Boston Globe Tuesday that Putin is in control of this superpower chess match. But Putin today said that if we do sanction him, if we impose sanctions, that he will retaliate. So what do we do in the light of all that?
Well, I think there are a number of things that both Congress, the U.S. Congress, and the White House can do, as Governor Richardson suggests correctly, in concert with the Europeans. Number one is Russia wants to join the Organization of Cooperation and Development in Europe. That should be put on ice. There are American sanctions called the Magnitsky Law, and Chapter 2, the second round of those sanctions, were never put forward by the Congress because the administration asked them not to a year or so ago. That can go forward. There can be visa sanctions on those Russian officials who've been involved in this operation in Ukraine and some of the oligarchs who are supporting it. So there's things that we can do on the economic side. They don't stop the Russian army and the Russian armed forces, but they do increase the isolation of the Russian government and of Putin himself. And Europe needs to take those steps as well. So I think there's a package of measures there. But much more importantly probably is what can you do proactively to help the Ukrainian government? And so Secretary Kerry committed to $1 billion in loan guarantees. Cathy Ashton, the EU High Representative, will be in Kiev tomorrow. Can the EU match that or do more? And can the IMF also be involved on a short-term basis before the Ukrainian presidential elections in May to try to help the Ukrainians as well? So we have to think internationally here and globally, and that's why there has to be a transatlantic response of Canada, the United States, and the 26 allies. The last thing I'd say is that NATO needs to meet at the president's level, at the foreign minister's level, to reaffirm our security guarantees for those allies that are, right next to Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, that Article 5 guarantee.
In that context, and talking about the Russian armed forces, Secretary of State John Kerry, who was in Kiev, he was stunned when a reporter told him that Putin had denied the role of the Russian troops in Crimea. He had this to say about Putin's claims that those forces were just there to protect local people.
Not a single piece of credible evidence supports any one of these claims. None.
So, Governor, we were talking about this. We called it the Putin Doctrine on our show last night. Shouldn't Russia's neighbors, especially the ones that Ambassador Burns just brought up, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, shouldn't they be very worried if Putin can sort of claim that he has the authority to send troops into another country if local people, Russians, are threatened?
Well, that's why I agree with Ambassador Burns, who's an expert on these issues, that NATO needs to meet. I mean, what we're talking about, I think Russia is very unhappy that NATO has expanded basically into its backyard. But having said that, there's some free republics outside of Russia that are pro-Western, that want to have more engagement with the United States, with the West. They're moving in the right direction. Yeah, they're understandably worried because of what happened in Crimea. Now, what I would like to see, and I don't know if Ambassador Burns would agree, is, maybe militarily the United States should revive that option of having the missiles in Poland. We scrapped that as a gesture to the Russians, but now, because of Russia's new intransigence, NATO is a very viable body. It's an important body. But these out-of-area issues outside of NATO, we need to consider what we're going to do. This is a U.S. decision, but it has to be in consultation with NATO.